I am so excited to be here with our Grace-Based Business Mompreneur series. And today I'm talking with Katelyn Silva. Now, Katelyn was one of our speakers on the Mompreneur Leverage at the Mompreneur Leverage Summit, and she talked about how to leverage your book to grow to your audience. And boy, that session was widely received. And so Katelyn is a five-time best-selling author of 12 books, and she's the founder of We Write Books, Coffee Date with Jesus, and host of the 1 Minute Writing Tip podcast. What I love, and she has this, what in her like bio is that she believes every person has a unique story worth telling and that your book can change a life. Thank you for joining me here, Katelyn.
Thank you so much, Mo. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm just like really honored that you invited me to come on and share with your people. So I can't wait to talk about books.
Yes. So first of all, I want to know, like, did you always know you wanted to write books? Or like what's the backstory here of you even getting to this point of being an author?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that. So it's actually deeply rooted in my childhood. My mom, from the time I was able to even start talking, was already teaching me how to write even before I could learn how to read. It was this kind of backwards writing method where it was called like the writing road to reading. So it was kind of experimental and fun. And so I remember even as a little girl writing these stories, and then I would wait for my dad to come home and then he would read them back to me because I couldn't even read what I wrote. And so as I got older, I just really had this I had this gift, but my mom also really just pushed me and encouraged me and fostered that love of writing and books and
Mm.
creating and all those things. And so when I was 8, my mom passed away. And so as I got older and life just got turned upside down and our family moved and there was just all these different things happening for me, I kind of held on to what she had given me, that gift that she had given me. And it became a way to honor her and remember
Mm.
her as I got older. And I also discovered that there were other authors that I read or that I followed or whatever that were hugely inspirational for me. And they provided a sense of, encouragement or escape when life was really hard
Yeah.
as a teenager, or different things like that. And eventually, when I was, all grown up, life just kind of took unexpected turns. And as a child, I always knew when I grew up, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be an author. Like those were my two things. And I just knew, sometimes you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, but sometimes you do. And when you do, you do,
Yeah.
and, um, and so, but like I said, life took real turns. And so I ended up, I was working full time. I had babies. I got married, not necessarily in that order, but regardless, real life responsibilities were happening and I had to pay the bills and put food on the table. And so writing just took a back seat. And then, I was just kind of living life and whatever. And then there was this one moment for me where my oldest at that time, he was a lot younger. He was getting close to about the age that I was when my mom passed away. And he had one of those events at school where the kids like perform and they sing and all the things. And I missed it because I was at work. And so I went to go pick him up from school and he just looked up at me with tears in his eyes and he was like,
Mm.
Mama, where were you? And he was like, I looked around and I saw all my friends' parents, but I couldn't find you. And in that moment, I was like, what am I even doing? Right. I was like, am I going to look back in 20 years with
Hmm.
regret, wishing that I had taken that next step and done what I know that I'm supposed to be doing with my life, like that calling, that inner purpose. And I just started going through like all these different thoughts of like, what if I miss out on being a mom? Like, what if I miss
Mm.
out on all those like once in a lifetime, you can never get back moments because I'm too busy working, you know?
Yeah. It was like that
And
mom guilt.
well, it wasn't even mom guilt, to be honest. It was like, it wasn't mom guilt. It was more like, I am missing out on what matters most right now.
Ooh, right.
Like, like my children are my treasures.
So is
And
that,
I'm,
that
Yeah, go
misalignment.
ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, it was like that misalignment of priorities in that season, like, what you were
exactly.
working, it wasn't lining up with where what you wanted to do. It was be
Right.
there with your kids.
Exactly. And so I felt like I'm doing something that is necessary, but I
Mhm.
could be doing something else that still pays the bills and is more aligned with what I actually feel like I'm supposed to be doing.
Ooh.
So in that moment, I was like, okay, something has to change. And so, I went and I picked up this like manuscript that I had kind of dabbled in for years as a teenager. And I was like, all right, I'm going to finish this thing. And all of a sudden, with that realignment of priorities, all of the things that I had really struggled with before kind of just faded away. Like, I used to struggle with like, I don't know how to bring it together. I don't know how to
Mhm.
connect the dots. I don't know if this is crap. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm really like I feel stuck. I don't know how to complete the story. Like all these different things, and all of a sudden it was like, no, I'm making this a priority, and I'm gonna get it done. I'm just gonna figure it out, right? And so I just looked at my time. I figured out, where I could allocate a little bit of time every day or whatever it was, you know, and I just worked on it. And in 6 months it was done. And then within a year from there, I got a traditional publishing deal. It was a small publisher, so that's a whole other story. But from that experience, I really just dove headfirst into the industry and I was like, okay, now I need to figure out how to actually make this work.
Mhm.
And so that led to, more books and, then going independent and, just all the things, right? And yeah, and I just want to, I'm sharing that because that kind of adds context because eventually it got to the point where other people looked at what I was doing and they were like, how are you doing this? Right? Like you're
Mhm.
a mom and you're working and you're publishing best-selling books. Like what's happening? And I was like, oh, there's other people that like are struggling like I was, right?
Right.
And so I started meeting with people for coffee and just like giving them tips and advice and just helping them out, out of a genuine love for just people. And then I kind of had a little bit of another slap in the face, priority shift moment where I was like, I really have this gift for teaching and this passion for helping people share the stories that God has given them. And
Mhm.
God was really leading, and of course I had bumps along the way and mistakes made and I got ahead of God and there was a whole process. But the point is that you know, through all of these different challenges and things that happened, God really worked through it and brought me into the
Mhm.
purpose that he had for me all along.
I love that you shared that because so many times we can look at where you are now. Like you're a best-selling author, you have like 12 books. I don't know, might be even more now. And we can be like, oh, I could never do that. But when you hear your story and you see that first it took um a moment where you were like, I can't do this anymore. Something has to change, where you took that manuscript and you're like, I've got to do something different. And then you had those doubts because almost everyone, I wouldn't even say almost everyone, when you're moving into something new that you haven't done yet, has doubts. Like, how do I do this? Is it good? Like, is it crappy? Like what you said. And it's this experience, and it's something we have to walk through in order to get to the other side where we've grown. Like once you wrote your first book, man, you knew how to do a bunch of different things that you didn't know when it was just sitting there still. And so now that you've done the process over and over again, it seems easy when we see you do it. And we're like, oh, I could never do that because it seems so easy. But yet it's it was a process that you had to walk through before part of it became easy. So what would you
Yeah.
say? Because I know that you say that everyone has a story. Like everyone has a story. What would you say to someone who's like, um, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Yeah.
story.
I think it's so easy to compare and look at everybody else and think, I'm not as good as them,
Mm.
or I don't have what they have. And that's exactly right. You don't have what they have because God made you different. He made you the way he made you for a purpose. And so I really encourage people, especially if they've they do feel like they're supposed to share something. They have that little seed in their heart but there's just so much like fear and doubt, and I don't feel like what I have is good enough, or I don't feel it's really not, I don't have a story. It's a deeper root underneath that
Mm,
of, the fears and the doubts and the
yeah.
struggles. And so I try to speak to those actual roots, because especially for people that like to read or listen to podcasts or whatever type of content you absorb, I guarantee every single person has had this experience where you have heard something a million times, and then for some reason, the way that one specific person
Mm,
says it or shares it or illustrates the story or whatever, it finally clicks. And you have
yeah.
that light bulb moment, and you're like, oh, now I get it. And all of a sudden, it kind of leads to this domino effect of, oh, I can do this now. I can do this now. And I can step into these new things now. And it shifts the way you approach something. It shifts, your plans. It shifts your actions. It can really change your life. And I want to challenge each person that there are people that are waiting for that from you.
Yes.
And by you withholding that, you're actually preventing the life change that God wants to illustrate or orchestrate through your voice in somebody else's life. And
Yes.
that can sound like a big, scary responsibility, but the truth is that you're not alone. The Holy Spirit is there to guide you. And
Hmm.
it's learning to almost go to the Lord and surrender and like just trust Him for that breaking and that rebuilding of how He wants you to be so that He can use you as His voice and His hands and His feet.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like, oh, I don't have a story, I want to really push back and challenge you to look deeper. Why are you saying that? What's the real root
Mhm.
of that, but like underneath? And I really want to invite you to just take it and lay it at the Lord's feet and ask Him, God, do I have a story? Do you want me to share this? And ask Him to give you that inspiration and that desire and that clarity, because He does answer those prayers.
Yes. And for many people, when if they're thinking, I don't have a story, or even if they know they have a story, but it just feels super vulnerable to share. And so it's that vulnerability, that can feel like this is, "Oh, no, this is" your brain's freaking out like, "This is dangerous. I should not do this." But
Mm-hmm.
I think about the verse in Revelation where it talks and about they overcame him by the blood of the lamb and the word of their testimony. And so your story is God's testimony of how he's worked things out in your life, and it is like a weapon of warfare. It is your experience. No one can tell you that you didn't experience it because you experienced it. Like,
Exactly.
they can't take that away from you.
Yep.
So, yes, writing everyone has a story. Um,
Yeah. And Mo, I really want to insert here too that it's not just nonfiction. It's not just
yeah,
memoir or personal
yeah,
testimony. Sometimes fiction can actually be the most powerful method of storytelling. And so, even if you have an idea for a fantastical world or a historical take on something in the Bible,
mhm,
or, even like sci-fi or, these other areas, even like clean romance, there are there are so many methods of storytelling. I mean,
yes,
look at Jesus. He used storytelling, right?
yep,
Where you do have an idea for something. And I agree with you. There is something that God wants to use that story for, and there is elements of spiritual warfare, even through storytelling, whether
mhm,
it be fiction or nonfiction. And so it's really choosing to step up to the plate, put on the armor of God, wield that sword of the Spirit, and let your story be heard. Because to your point, exactly, um, it is, against the enemy. And I really want to challenge people because there's so much like literature out there, especially in the fiction space, that is so dark
yeah,
and that has gotten grounds for the enemy so much that I'm like, okay, where are all my fellow women warriors at? Like,
yeah,
and men warriors, where are my fellow storytelling warriors at that are going to put out that content like C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien that wield some kind of spiritual
yeah.
warfare? You know what I'm
It's
saying?
like
So
Having
Yeah.
my teens go to the young adult section in the library, like, oh my goodness, what is
Hmm.
out there is yeah, you wouldn't even believe that there's books just right out there. So that aren't
Hmm.
God loving or
They're
whatever.
the opposite,
Yes.
they're like
Yes.
they're like actively trying to dissuade that. And I'm
Yes.
like, come on, like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
love that you like brought that up, that it's not just telling, like, your story doesn't have to be your personal story. It can be a work of fiction. It could be poetry. It could be whatever the Lord wants you to get out in the world, because you know what? God is the ultimate creator, and if we are in his image, we are creators too. So it's like, Lord, what do you want me to create? And if he's asking you to create something with words, like, get your story out. But it doesn't, I would like, I know there's individuals who are like, but I hate writing. I am not good with words. So how do you have a process to help people just like navigate this, so it's not just like, oh, I have to sit, because we have this picture. I'm sitting in front of the computer with a blank piece of paper and just the blank screen, just typing stuff. I mean, what is your process in a nutshell, like short?
Yeah, I know it's so hard to put something like that into like,
I
oh,
know.
this is my one sentence. But what I would say is that the unique thing about my process is that it's not in a box.
Hmm.
Whenever I work with people, or even when I just have just a conversation with someone, and I don't even work with them for the full program, I really hone in on what is your unique approach, style, process, like what's going to work for you, and then go do that thing. So for some people, it's okay, I'm going to get a recording app on my phone and I'm going to speak, like,
Hmm.
on long drives, or, in the
Yeah.
bathroom, or whatever it is, right? So you can do speak to text, and then transcribe everything. There's just so many different methods. And it's really okay, if you're not good with writing, what are you good at? What is going to work for you? And then go do that thing.
Ooh, I like that. Because I had one question from someone when I was saying that you were going to be on, and they had asked, like, how do you order your thoughts and ideas for your books when you have like random inspiration? Like, how do you order them? Do you just do, like you say, do a voice memo and then have a bazillion memos?
Yeah. So it sounds like in this case, it's kind of an issue of it being all jumbled in your mind. So what I always recommend is, you can't organize a jumble in your mind, but you
Mm,
can organize concrete stuff on paper. So I always recommend like sitting down and doing some kind of brainstorming session and writing everything out. And then from there, looking at the paper and looking at, okay, what things are correlated? What things can I organize into groups? How can I structure this into something that flows? So then I actually have something to work with, and it's not just this confused jumble. And the other thing I would add is that when you have different ideas and you're not sure which one to pick, it's always good to have either a document in your computer or a separate notebook on the side where you do jot down those ideas somewhere that you can keep track of. These are my different story ideas. And then that way it's more systematic, and you can go through and you're not losing ideas that you gain that you want to come back to later.
right.
But at the same time, you're not getting distracted from the one you're actually working on right now, because you're jumping to a new idea every time you have one, right? So it really helps to keep things organized and keep things in a concrete place so that your
Mhm.
mind can stay clear and continue developing the stories you're working on.
Love that. I love that. Because like I'm a post-it note person. So I have had to figure out different ways to organize virtual post-it notes so that I'm not losing them. And so I use
Yeah.
specific software to do that. But yeah, so it's like having a place to put those ideas and knowing where to find them,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know besides being an author and working your business, you're also a mom and you have 4 kids.
Yes.
Okay. So can you just speak to like, maybe give a tip how, when things are getting hectic with family or business, like, what are some things that you use or do, or priorities that just help you know that you are doing exactly what you need to do for your business, but also, keeping your family priority?
Yeah. That's such a great question. I think it's so important to have effective communication and effective boundaries. So, with my children, I have a 19-month-old and a 4-year-old. So they don't necessarily understand, oh, mama needs to do something right now. So it's really great for me to take advantage of nap times, for example, because my older kids, they understand, okay, mom's doing something. I need to be quiet for a little bit. But it's also really important for me to communicate effectively and let them know in advance, hey, mama has this thing happening at this time. It's going to last for
Mhm.
this amount of time. Here's the activities you're going to do during that time. And then it really does help when I have my older boys come in and give their helping hands with
Yeah.
the little ones and things like that. And even when my older ones were younger, it was the same thing. It was like, hey, mama has this thing. So, it was either during nap times or it was, hey, this is the activity you're doing, and just wait till I'm done. It's going to be 30 minutes or whatever. And if I do have something that I know it's going to take longer, I try to do something that is engaged with, in the family space. So
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm going to be sitting here working on this thing, but I'm with you. If you need a question, you can ask. Mom's still available. Mom's not isolating herself unless it's, an interview or I need to record something without
Right.
background noise or something like
Right.
that. So again, it's just communication and boundaries and just effectively as a family knowing this is what's happening. This is when mom's available, and really making them feel like just because I'm working doesn't mean that mom doesn't care. Mom's just, cut
Yeah.
off. It's really making them feel loved and cherished, and um, like they still matter. I'm communicating with them no matter what age they are. And that really helps.
Yeah, and I think that communication with your kids also gives them a little sense of ownership in your business. Like they know what's going on. It's not just that's mom's thing. Because like even when I'm doing coaching calls or calls like this, I will tell my kids that are still at home, and I laugh because my youngest is 11 now, so it's not as little. But even when he was younger, he knew he would just listen at the door, and he could be able to tell when the call was, like, ending, and then as soon as it was over, it's like, "Okay, mom," but he knew the boundaries, and he was happy, to know them. He needed to know them. So I think it helped him just feel like, "Okay, yeah, like, I'm also understand like, I don't understand all that mom's doing, but she's communicating with me, and I'm a part of this too." So it's not this, like, separation thing. It's like, "Okay, this is we're all part of it. This is your role right now. This is my role."
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that the issue of stress for moms really comes in when they feel like it has to be this totally separate thing of like if I'm
Yeah.
working on my business, I can't be a mom, and if I'm being a mom, I can't work on my business. Like that mentality has to go away. Like
Yeah.
we have to recognize that you're a mom all the time and you can still do business things and be a mom, and it's okay. And I love too just that, you know, I feel like because of the corporate world, moms have this pressure to look a certain way or be a certain way or present a certain way.
Mhm.
And that's just not realistic, especially in this like digital age that we live in where people are working from home and you do have the kids in the background. And so I think just having a little bit more grace and compassion with each other and recognizing like
Yeah.
you can look put together with the makeup and all the things, but it doesn't mean that everything has to be 100% perfect. It doesn't have to be like, an office setting where everything looks pristine and it's
Mhm.
just perfect. It's like, that's not real. Let's just be real and give each other some grace.
Yes, love that, and that's all about expectations. The
Mhm.
expectations are the shoulds that we put on ourselves on what it should look like if we're working our business or as a mom, and then just shifting them, because if God's given us, a calling through our business, and we see, our business is one way that we're able to reach others, like, for how God wants us to help others, it's going to align with our family. Like, we can make it be this, like, thing that works together instead of the 2 separate things, like you said. I love that. So, Caitlin, as we're wrapping this up, I know as we were talking beforehand that you have something coming up on February 15th. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, I do a live workshop where I get into all the things and answer a lot of questions that people have about the process of writing and publishing in a lot more depth. So, it's called How to Write and Publish Your Bestseller in 6 Months or Less. And I really just kind of look at that actual process one step at a time. And I talk about why does the world need your book and why right now? Because I really
Mhm.
believe that now is the best time, because we can't go back in the past, right? But now is the best time. And then I also talk about, that process, of course, the nitty gritty. But then I also talk about that bigger vision beyond just the book, because so many times people get so caught up in just the book that they don't have that longer vision beyond. And
Mhm.
when they publish, that all of a sudden it's like the deer in the headlights where they're like, oh, now what do I do? And so I like to talk about what that looks like and kind of give some
Mhm.
future casting expectations. So that way it's not limbo. It's like, oh, wow, my book is this whole world of opportunity of like, speaking or book signings or future books or
Yeah.
whatever. And just crafting that vision with each individual person, because each person is unique and they do have something special that God's put on their life. And I love helping people to be able to craft that vision and then know the steps to accomplish it.
Ooh, I love that. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I know God has laid on my heart to get a story out, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, like Katelyn has the tools and resources. So I would definitely connect with her. So is there a website? I know we can drop the exact link. We'll drop that in the comments. But is there like a website, Facebook group, or something that someone could connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they go to wewritebooks.com, it'll just like there's a little pop-up that says, "Hey, check out the workshop." And of course there's free resources. If they want to go to the exact link and go ahead and just sign up for the workshop, it's free. You can go to wewritebooks.com/write hyphen bestseller hyphen event. And you can sign up and get all the details in your email and all that. So yeah, I highly recommend going to wewritebooks.com and checking it out.
That is so awesome. I'm going to leave one question for those who are watching this replay. Um, Caitlin said that everyone has a story or stories can impact us. So I want you to leave in the comments, what's a story? It could be someone's biography, it could be a fantasy. What's a story that has impacted you? So leave that in the comments below because I would just love to hear and maybe pick up something new to read that might be an inspiration to myself as well. So leave that below. If you have any questions for Katelyn about like getting your story out, what would that look like? Or any of the questions about motherhood and business for either of us, leave those in the comments below because we would love to answer them. So thank you so much, Katelyn, for joining me today. I appreciate you taking some time. And I look forward to like some of the people in this group are going to have a story and they're going to come back in a year and say, this was part of what got me moving forward. And so I look forward to like hearing these new stories that are going to be coming out, being birthed in this next year because of you sharing that, you know what? Everyone does have a story. I'm Maureen Spell, and I want to thank you for joining me in this Grace Based Business series. If this resonated with you, click that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to this channel.